New footage has just circulated of possibly David and Celeste Rivas Hernandez, the girl whose body was found in his car. If true, what does this tell us? Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. We have another layer to this David Celeste Rivas Hernandez case that we want to talk about. Apparently, potentially video of them together. Now, why does this matter? Well, considering the body of 14-year-old Celeste was found in the trunk of a Tesla registered to singer David Anthony Burke, back in September, and understanding the relationship, that becomes key. Now, there's been online speculation about the two of them. TMZ has reported that those in the romantic homicide singer's inner circle believed she was 19 years old, that they were hanging out. He's 20, by the way. The New York Post reporting that in a 2023 song, David raps, "Oh, Celeste, the girl with my name tattooed on her chest, smell her on my clothes like cigarettes." And speaking of tattoos, it was reported that Celeste and David each have these matching tattoos on their fingers. That actually seems to be how her decomposed remains were ID'd. Now, there were reports that she is a runaway, speculation that she was trying to see David. And despite all of this, there is no established connection or association or relationship that has been confirmed by authorities investigating Celeste's death. In fact, there is no confirmed suspect or person of interest, even a cause of death for Celeste. But what has just come out? What are we talking about? This 30-second clip from what seems to be a Twitch live stream. And now we don't know for sure when it was recorded, but it was apparently posted on social media back in September, and it is really making waves right now.
He trained you.
No, you didn't.
That's controversial.
It's controversial of raping kids.
Really good.
Okay,
It's been a good one. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Mwah, 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 mwah. Oh my. Delete everything. Delete everything. Everything goes.
Now, something I have to say on top of the fact that David, has not been arrested, criminally charged, or officially implicated in any crime or wrongdoing in connection with Celeste's death. Her death certificate confirms she was not pregnant at the time of her death, nor in the year leading up to her death. And while law enforcement hasn't even officially confirmed that Celeste was killed, in other words, was there a crime beyond someone putting her body into that car, if she was killed, if she was murdered, why? Now, before we dive any further into how this live stream may affect the investigation, I just want to play you something real quick. We interviewed in our previous episode of Sidebar Steve Fisher, the private investigator who was hired by the landlord of the property that David was apparently staying at in Los Angeles. If you recall, authorities searched that property. David moved his stuff out. The Tesla with Celeste's body was near that place too. Listen to what Fisher had to say as we try to understand the potential connection between David and Celeste.
We now have a much better understanding of when that Tesla arrived at that final parking spot. I'll tell you, I do have surveillance from different houses in the neighborhood showing the Tesla being moved.
Do you know who was driving that car, that Tesla? You don't have to tell me, but do you know the identity?
Yeah, as far as it going to the final, that what we believe is the final parking spot where it was towed from, yes.
Do you know if Celeste was ever at that property?
You know, what we recovered, we don't have any of her at that property. We have pictures of her and that were taken by David, we assume, because it's not on a camera phone, but these photos are on a regular camera at different locations. And it really makes me think that it's likely she had another place she was staying. I can tell you that there was a lot of time spent towards downtown LA. But I will say this: there are some things that, and I'm talking physical evidence that was at that house that is. There could have been greater plans as far as getting rid of her, and it's scary, sadistic stuff. And that's why we're trying to learn more about that, because and I wish I could say more, but for obvious reasons I can't. But it doesn't have to do with her, how she died, but maybe how they were planning on ultimately getting rid of her, and how maybe that Tesla was just a holding spot at the time, and things just, their timing was just off as far as getting this done. But there's a few things that were just like, will blow your mind.
Okay, so now let me bring in Dave Sarney, retired NYPD detective, adjunct professor at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. Dave, thanks so much for coming back here. What do you make of this new footage?
Well, thank you for having me, Will. This is another, we always talk about cases having legs. This has a lot of legs, but they're not going anywhere. They're going in different directions. And when you see this video and you're hearing about this the first time and the way he actually reacts to this, is there something to what Celeste said on that video? So this is going to maybe now continue another investigation dealing with him, dealing with children. And it has been speculated, it's been this way for a while, that most of the fans that know David and all through the internet, that he met her at the age of 12 and somehow he groomed her. This is all speculation, of course, but we're seeing, is this a pattern of David's to deal with children, to deal with kids in general? We don't know if it's female kids, male kids, we don't really know. But that comes out, and the reaction of him, that's where you feel that there's a possibility that might be happening. So now we have to look at it that way.
Let me just confirm what you're saying. A, do you believe police are looking at this video, or have they looked at it and tried to analyze it? And B, are you suggesting, even though, let's be clear, there's speculation, he hasn't officially been charged or implicated in any crime, when we look at why hasn't there been a person of interest or suspect or arrest, that potentially there could be something bigger that law enforcement is looking into?
I think you should look at every avenue in this investigation, because this is what happens. You're hoping the detectives and investigators are looking, this is another part of the puzzle. It may be part of this particular puzzle about why Celeste's body was in that car and who put her there, but it's something else to look at, because you have no criminal charges right now based on, all you may have is tampered physical evidence and disposal of human body. Now we're looking, they're waiting for toxicology to come back. Right now, this case is considered a cuppy. In New York, we'd call it a cuppy. Circumstances unknown, pending police investigation. The ME's office in California call it unspecified or undetermined. So we're looking at that. This is another avenue to look at. And I'm hoping that law enforcement is looking at this and looking at David on that other end. If this comes out, and this is what Celeste said on video and his reaction, and this is what comes down to, it wasn't he delete everything. So this is something to look at parallel to the investigation of Celeste's death.
Hey guys, I'm so pumped to tell you about today's sponsor. It is a brand called Wild Grain. Now, Wild Grain is the first bake from frozen subscription box for artisanal breads, seasonal pastries, fresh pastas. Wild Grain products, they bake in 25 minutes or less, but that doesn't mean that they're, skimping on quality. Unlike store-bought products, Wild Grain uses a slow fermentation process that's easier on your belly and richer in nutrients and antioxidants. Wild Grain's boxes, they're also fully customizable with a big selection of seasonal and limited time products, and if you got dietary restrictions, it's not a problem. They have gluten-free boxes, they have plant-based boxes. So by the way, it is peak fall weather right now in New York, and I'm getting really into Wild Grain's autumn selection, especially the apple pie bites, the pumpkin spice English muffins. You pop them in the oven on a cool fall evening, your whole apartment is going to smell amazing with their fresh, real flavors in just a few minutes. So this fall, treat yourself and your loved ones to warm sourdough breads and seasonal baked goods from Wild Grain. Rumor has it, by the way, they have apple cider donuts and pumpkin cinnamon biscuits, so get them before these seasonal items sell out. For a limited time, Wild Grain is offering our listeners $30 off of their first box, plus free croissants in every box when you go to wildgrain.com/sidebar to start your subscription. You heard me right. That is free croissants in every box, $30 off of your first box when you go to wildgrain.com/sidebar. That's wildgrain.com/sidebar, or you can use promo code sidebar at checkout. Don't miss their seasonal products.
There could have been greater plans as far as getting rid of her, and it's scary, sadistic stuff.
Big news on the David Celeste Rivas Hernandez case. We now know who the private investigator is that was hired by the Hollywood Hills landlord for the home that David had been staying at, right by where the Tesla was found with Celeste's body inside. Well, we just sat down with this investigator himself, Steve Fisher, about what he has learned so far, what we can expect next. Let me tell you, it is shocking. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. All right, so you remember that we told you that the Hollywood Hills landlord, the property manager for that property that David, the singer, had been staying at, that property owner, that landlord, had hired a private investigator to look into the death of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez, the teen found dismembered in David's abandoned Tesla that was nearby? Well, not only do we know who this private investigator is, but I just interviewed him. Yeah, you're going to see him on this episode, and I'm recording this introduction after I interviewed him, and let me just say, he reveals a lot, okay? A lot. Now, this may not provide all the answers, but I will tell you, if you are listening to what he has to say, you're starting to get a better picture of a lot of things, okay? So this PI himself, Steve Fisher, we'll play that interview in a minute. Now, quick refresher. So police raided this $3.64 million home, which David had reportedly been paying tens of thousands of dollars in rent. We know that Celeste's body was found in the trunk of his impounded Tesla back in September, that the Tesla was near this property. And to be clear, since then, there's been no suspects that have been named, no persons of interest, no arrests. David has canceled his tour. He's moved out of that mansion. He has transferred properties that he owned in Texas to his mother. The whole thing has been a lot of unanswered questions. And that is where this LA landlord, apologies if I'm mispronouncing the name here, Mladen Trifunovic, stepped in. He wasn't content to sit back and just wait for the LAPD, so he brought in his own private investigator to start digging, to get some more answers. We've talked about that in a previous episode, but now we actually know who that investigator is, Steve Fisher. I'm going to play you that interview. It is something, but let me just say real quick, pin down exactly what this case is about. This all started on September 8th when LAPD officers were called to a tow yard on Mansfield Avenue in Hollywood after workers noticed this foul odor coming from a Tesla that had been sitting there. That car was registered to 20-year-old singer David, real name David Anthony Burke, the Houston-born artist behind the hit Romantic Homicide. That Tesla had been abandoned near the Hollywood Hills rental property, towed away, and was just sitting there. And when officers opened the front trunk, they found something horrific. Human remains wrapped in plastic. And a few days later, it was confirmed that that body belonged to 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez, a teen runaway who had been missing from Lake Elsinore since April of 2024. Her remains were decomposed, suggesting that she had been in that car for weeks. The cause of death is still officially deferred. Now, while David is not being considered at this point officially as a suspect or even a person of interest, the internet started connecting the dots, or seemingly connecting alleged dots, between David and Celeste. Screenshots from Discord chats, live stream clips, old photos started circulating, all suggesting that they had been in contact. Maybe they were even in some kind of relationship. TMZ had reported those that were close to David thought that Celeste was 19 years old, that maybe there was a relationship going on, and fans have pointed out that both she and David had that same small shh tattoo on their fingers. And if that wasn't eerie enough, David has this unreleased song with Celeste in the title that's been reported. Everything has unraveled for David since the discovery. There's been a canceled tour date, pause on promotions for his upcoming album, drop brand deals. And while all of this is happening, David has been making some major legal and financial moves. He's retained Blair Burke, the powerhouse Hollywood defense attorney who's represented people like Harvey Weinstein. David transferred the deeds to 2 Texas properties to his mother right after one of those houses was apparently swatted, this false reporting of a shooting and a dead body there. But now let's get to it. Okay, let's circle back to that Hollywood Hills rental property, how a private investigator, a PI, even got involved in this case. So according to LA Magazine, police had executed a search warrant on that property back on September 17th. So since David had been renting it for reportedly about $20,000 a month, a home that was owned by a man named Mladen Trifunovic. And officers reportedly collected electronics, computers. They searched the drains for traces of blood or tissue. At least that's the reporting from TMZ. Can't officially confirm that. But this homeowner had said that after he'd heard almost nothing from the LAPD about what they found, he was frustrated. And that is when he made his move and hired his own PI. He told TMZ and the Daily Mail that his family wanted answers about what might have happened in or around this home, and that he wasn't trying to interfere with the police investigation. He just didn't want to be left in the dark about what connections, if any, his property could have to all this. And TMZ reports that the LAPD has since seized surveillance footage from the same home, cameras that could show exactly who entered or exited the property. Now, this homeowner reportedly told the outlet that he hasn't even seen the footage himself out of respect for his tenant's privacy. He also claims the police still haven't given him a copy of the warrant or told him exactly what they took. So the big question now is what exactly happened in or around that home, right? And whether the private investigator hired by this landlord, this property owner, has found anything that could shed light on that timeline. And that is where we're heading next, okay? Just one more thing before we get to him, something that we've learned. LA County District Attorney Nathan Hochman spoke out, confirmed the case is still under investigation. No case has been presented to his office yet. We're going to get into that a little bit. But now I want to bring on our special guest. I'm joined by private investigator Steve Fisher, who is hired by David's former landlord. Really appreciate you taking the time here to talk about this. First off, Steve, how were you hired? How were you retained in this matter?
So originally, when the case when the body was originally found, I had another missing persons case going in LA of a female, and we thought that that could be that individual. And so I kind of stayed with the case for a little while until she was identified, and we knew it wasn't. And I had discovered some other things, such as when the car was towed and photos from it being towed and whatnot. And, the owner had gotten in touch with me of the house, and I shared some things with him, and it just kind of evolved from there. But one thing, I would say is he is the owner of the house. He wasn't David's landlord. David wasn't even on the lease, and the owner never even knew that David was in the house. It was actually Josh Marshall, his manager, who had leased the house.
But to be clear, David was living there, right?
Yes, he was definitely staying there. It just was not known to the owner.
Right. Okay. And by the way, I understand this is, an active investigation. There might be limited what you can share. But what exactly is he looking for in this? What exactly is this property owner? What kind of answers is he looking for?
So where really kind of evolved from was the search warrant was served, I believe, on the 17th or 18th. And it was a forced entry search warrant, meaning that nobody was home at the time. And they did not leave a copy of the warrant or of the return, the inventory list of the items that they took from the house. And it was really kind of born out of that. I was not officially retained at that time, but I helped him try to obtain that. And we told robbery homicide, hey, listen, no warrant was left behind. David was out on tour. Josh Marshall lives out of state, we found out. So the owner had his representative go to the house immediately after he found out about this. And there was no warrant, no return. So he really just wants to understand what of his property could have been taken and what the status of that is. And then also, this is troublesome when you learn something like this. All of a sudden you're thrown into this, and he feels absolutely horrible for Celeste's family. And he's like, if there's anything that involves, in and around my house that could help, then I want to discover that. And I'll tell you that there have been things that we've learned and we've turned right over to LAPD, but we think there's significant, things that could help.
Do you mean that there might be evidence that a crime was committed at that house?
Not so much a crime, no. And I'll just be honest with you. We don't have any evidence that anything happened to Celeste at that house, but there's definitely evidence that we've collected that helps the timeline. We now have a much better understanding of when that Tesla arrived at that final parking spot. I'll tell you, I do have surveillance from different houses in the neighborhood showing the Tesla being moved. So things like that, and I'm not even saying that LAPD didn't have that. I'm sure they did, but we wanted to make sure, and we did some work and on the up-resing the footage to find out who was driving the vehicle. And there are some other items that were found at the house that weren't taken during the search warrant. And search warrants are limited, right? They can't just go take everything. It's what the judge, and we don't know how broad that search warrant was because we haven't seen it, and that's what we'd like to see. But there were some things that were not taken into custody of LAPD that we think are significant, and including digital media and some other things that really help nail down timeline and things like that.
And you handed that over to LAPD. There's other.
We have literally the day that we the things that we've recovered, we've given to LAPD within 24 hours.
Do you know who was driving that car, that Tesla? You don't have to tell me, but do you know the identity?
Yeah, as far as going to the final, what we believe is the final parking spot where it was towed from, yes. And
that information's been communicated to law enforcement.
So it's been given to law enforcement. They're not going to tell us if they're confirming if that's a person or not. Robbery homicide, the way they work is we'll take your information. We're not going to speak on it, so I don't know. But listen, it's very clear that that neighborhood is filled with surveillance cameras, and the timelines, once we learn those dates and we can see other things that were happening that were even public on Instagram and whatnot, or going on in those people's lives, it makes a lot of sense.
6 weeks after the tragic discovery of teenager Celeste Rivas Hernandez's body in a Tesla linked to rising singer David, the investigation is now taking a new turn. Frustrated by what he calls a lack of information from police, The owner of the Hollywood Hills mansion, where David had apparently been staying, has hired a private investigator to dig into the property, review surveillance, interview potential witnesses in hopes of uncovering critical details that may have gone unnoticed. We are going to be speaking to the former Natalee Holloway private investigator, TJ Ward, to break down what this kind of private investigation can reveal and what we can expect. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. The investigation into Houston-born singer David, real name David Anthony Burke, is taking yet another turn. Weeks after the body of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez was found decomposed inside of a Tesla that was reportedly registered to him, there is now a new development, a development that could shift the entire focus of this case. Has to do with the Los Angeles home that David was apparently renting out just before the discovery of the body in the Tesla. Someone is reportedly being brought in behind the scenes to dig for answers. And we're going to get to that. But first, here's how all this began, okay? September 8th, LAPD officers were called to a Hollywood tow yard on Mansfield Avenue after workers noticed a foul odor coming from a Tesla that was registered out of Texas. The vehicle had reportedly been abandoned in the Hollywood Hills days earlier and was towed. When officers opened the front trunk, that is when they made a horrifying discovery: human remains wrapped in plastic. The Los Angeles County Medical Examiner later identified the dismembered body of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez, who had been reported missing from Riverside County in April of 2024. According to authorities, Celeste's remains were badly decomposed. So this is possibly suggesting that she had been in that car for an extended period of time. To be clear, her official cause of death remains deferred at this point. There appears to be more testing that needs to be done. But at the time she disappeared, there were rumors that were circulating linking Celeste to David, this rising singer. There was apparent Discord chat screenshots and fan speculation suggesting that she had been in contact with him and they may have been in some sort of relationship despite the age difference, 20 years old. Celeste's family told NBC Los Angeles that her 15th birthday was the day before her body was found, that she had disappeared after leaving home to see a movie. One detail that immediately drew attention is that Celeste reportedly had a tattoo on her finger that read, "Shh." This is a design that appeared almost identical to one seen in photos of David's own hand. Since the discovery, the fallout for David has been swift and it's been severe. Both of his remaining U.S. tour dates, San Francisco, Los Angeles, they were canceled, along with multiple European shows that were listed on Ticketmaster. A planned Grammy Museum appearance in LA also quietly vanished from the venue site. His label, Interscope Records, confirmed to TMZ that all promotional activities, including his deluxe album release, has been paused. His brand deals falling apart. He was featured in this Hollister and Crocs collaboration. That has apparently been scrubbed from the campaign days after the launch. In a brief statement, a spokesperson said the singer is cooperating fully with authorities, though no arrests have been made. David has not been implicated in any wrongdoing. He is not facing any crimes. He hasn't been charged. He isn't an official suspect. And he's been silent publicly. We now know that he's retained a powerhouse criminal defense attorney, Blair Burke, who has represented a number of celebrities. No statement from her or from David's team so far. And as of now, 6 weeks after this grim discovery, there have been no arrests. There's been no publicly named suspects, no confirmed cause of death, as I said, no confirmed persons of interest. They haven't even identified the exact connection between Celeste and David. And this situation, I will tell you, is rapidly evolving, and it seems behind the scenes. Because now, in the weeks since Celeste's body was found, there are new details that are beginning to surface. Sources confirm that a private investigator has now entered the picture, and it could change what we know about who's really driving this case forward and why it might be driving it forward. I'm going to get to that. But first, to help us break it all down, I want to bring on a special guest. I'm joined right now by private investigator TJ Ward, who, by the way, was the PI on the Natalee Holloway case. TJ, thank you so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Now, based on your experience, and we're going to get into this new update in a minute, but based on your experience with missing teen cases, what are the early investigative red flags that you would have noticed, that you would have caught on to or highlighted in this one, in Celeste Rivas Hernandez's disappearance, the online rumors connecting her to David?
Well, one of the things that you need to do after a law enforcement gets involved is start looking at everybody that's involved. You have to start looking at those people and who they may think may be involved or what may be involved. So obviously this body was found in the trunk of this man's car. And now one of the things that we have that is kind of unique is there's cameras everywhere. So looking at cameras and finding if there was cameras near where his car was or how his car got there or where it may have been is real important. But even when I get involved in cases, when I get hired, I always look into the person that hired me. I start looking into them also. That's real important. You need to find the background about the person that wants to hire you and why. And let me tell you why I tell you that. I have been hired or tried to get hired on people that have protective orders against them, and they want to hire me to find out what's going on with the person they have a protective order against them. So you have to be real careful and look at the person that's hiring you also to be able to get into a case. You don't want to get caught up in something of that nature. But that's what brought my attention several years ago when somebody tried to hire me when they actually had a protective order against them. And so I started looking at everybody that hires me. I look into them first and see what's going on with them.
That leads me perfectly into what's happening right now, because the new focus seems to involve this LA home that David reportedly rented for tens of thousands of dollars a month prior to Celeste's body being found. And this leads to a new development I want to get into. So TMZ reports that a private investigator has been brought into this in some way, not by law enforcement, no, that the owner of this Hollywood Hills mansion where Burke was staying has reportedly hired his own PI after growing frustrated with the lack of information from the LAPD. So on September 8th, let's put in context here. September 8th, the decomposed remains of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez were discovered wrapped in plastic in the front trunk of Burke's impounded Tesla. September 17th, LAPD homicide detectives, they executed a search warrant on a reported $4.1 million Hollywood Hills rental property that David was reportedly staying at when Celeste's body was found. And this is reportedly near where the Tesla was. The owner of that property, identified as Mladen Trifunovic, apologies if I'm mispronouncing the name, he reportedly told the Daily Mail that he has only limited contact with police and is deeply concerned about what role his property may have played in all this. And this is why he has now taken independent action. According to reporting from multiple outlets, he has hired a private investigator to review surveillance footage and interview potential witnesses to establish a timeline of events and determine if and when Celeste was at this property. In a statement, he told the Daily Mail, "I have a private investigator gathering information because my family and I want to understand what may or may not have happened in or around a home that is very special to us. We are not interfering with the LAPD's investigation. We are simply seeking answers I fear may not be communicated to us unless we use a licensed investigator." And he later added to TMZ that the PI's work is still ongoing and that it's still early in the process. TJ, your reaction?
Well, I believe that's a smart thing to do because they don't know from this point what law enforcement has or what their intentions are. So whatever reason, this guy who's now been implicated maybe of this death of this girl was in the back of his car. It's real important to find out. And I think you told me that LAPD issued a search warrant to go into the home and to search the home. Well, what were they looking for? What did they find? And what did they remove from the home? So for this homeowner to incorporate a private investigator would be a very smart and tactical thing to do to protect himself about this home, because now this home has become a piece of evidence in the course of this investigation for whatever reason. So this investigator needs to find out what is the reason and what did they find, what did they take out of the house, and what are they looking for. So this is real important. Now, I'm sure they got the copy of the search warrant and the return on the search warrant, which would tell the public exactly, or law enforcement, what they took out of the house and what they did.
Why did singer David just transfer 2 properties to his mother amid the investigation into the death of Celeste Rivas Hernandez, the young girl whose decomposed body was found in his car? Does this have to do with a recent apparent swatting incident at his parents' house? Is there something else going on here? Is this suspicious? Is it strategic? Let's discuss. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Okay, so we have this new development in the continuing story of singer David, who has been in the news quite a lot lately since the body of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez was found in a Tesla that was registered to his name. This was back on September 8th out in LA. We have been covering every aspect of this story, as currently there are no arrests, there are no identified persons of interest, there's no identified suspects, there's no released cause and manner of death. And when it comes to David, who authorities haven't officially confirmed what the exact connection or relationship he has to Celeste, even though there has been speculation and reporting that the two were romantically involved, while he hasn't been implicated in any wrongdoing or any crime, there is a lot of interesting stuff that has been going on that we have been trying to piece together to see if it has any connection to the investigation into Celeste's death. And that includes with respect to David's parents and what David reportedly did with that house that we need to talk about. Also another property. So on September 18th, we've talked about this. This is after Celeste's body was found. Someone called 911 to David's parents' house in Hempstead, Texas, in what appears to be a fake report, this alleged swatting incident.
Waller County Sheriff's Office is Amber. Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, Waller County Sheriff's Office.
Hello, I need help.
Okay, what's going on? Where are you at?
My address is...
Okay, what's going on?
I heard, some, gunshots.
Okay. How close to your residence were they?
They were, right outside my house, and I think someone's dead.
Okay, what's your name?
Say it again?
What's your name? Okay, what's a good phone number for you, sir? Okay, and why do you believe that somebody's dead?
I just heard, a loud scream, and there was, gunshots.
Oh, scream. Okay. After shots. Okay, but you haven't saw or heard anything else after that?
I heard a scream.
Was it a male or a female scream, do you think?
It was a female.
Female? Okay, we're going to go ahead and get deputies headed out that way. Just confirming you're at...
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to get them sent that way, okay?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
We actually interviewed an audio expert who concluded that this call was in fact distorted, someone masking their voice. It's on a previous episode of Sidebar. I'll play a little bit of it in a little bit. But police, they ended up showing up to this house.
It ain't on their phone.
And this is not a Texas.
Yeah, it's an out-of-state number.
Someone's messing with us.
But whoever, it would pinged here though, because wherever they call from, it pings and sends it to dispatch.
What the what?
So whenever you call 911, wherever you are, it sends a ping to that's how they know the address.
And this address came up to this number?
Yes, ma'am, that's where he was meeting.
County to engine 42. So is there somebody on my property?
It could be. We'll check the property for you.
Yes, please.
So we'll ride around. If you give me a layout, how's the property? Does it go further back?
No, it doesn't go any further back. It's right here, and then it goes
Follow the fence, there was a gate, and the fence around, which is a private fence.
Well, him and I will ride around and check, and then we'll leave. And I'll put the pin back. Because all you do is pull that pin, and then I'll put it all back together.
Thank you, sir.
But yeah, no, I'll take it apart because when it's something like that, when somebody says something like that, we got to get up here to save somebody's life, you know?
Yeah, okay, so that was a false alarm. You see, I don't like this kind of thing. So if I really do have an emergency, then...
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Sorry.
If you do have an emergency, you know we're going to be here.
Okay.
We're going to get here.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
All right.
Y'all have a good night.
And now we got to talk about what is being reported. Okay, so according to TMZ, David has transferred deeds of 2 Texas homes to a trust in his mother's name. That this apparently happened on September 18th and September 22nd. September 18th was the day of this alleged swatting incident, and that home appears to be one of the properties that we're talking about. So why did he do this in the middle of a death investigation? Time to bring in Matthew Sarelson, trial attorney, to talk more about this. Matthew, thank you so much for taking the time. Why did he do it? Why do you think he did it?
Thanks for having me. So I have two suspicions as to why he did this. This case, you guys have been covering this from the start. This is getting crazier and crazier by the minute. I have two suspicions as to why he did it, and both of them have to do with asset protection. Old-fashioned, I want to preserve my assets in the event something happens to me. If he is charged criminally, and obviously we're speculating, but if he were to be charged criminally, there would be a monetary fine as part of any potential punishment. If he doesn't have the assets to pay the fine, then he can't pay the fine. So one thing to do is get rid of your assets and put them in someone else's name. The other side to this is related, which is there going to be a civil lawsuit? Celeste's family could file a wrongful death lawsuit against him and others. It's a little premature because there's still a lot of unanswered questions about this. But if they were to file a civil lawsuit, he could essentially try to hide assets in his mother's name or in anyone else's name, for that matter. Whether he's successful is a whole different conversation.
Bunch of questions with that. By the way, this is exactly what I suspected too might be going on. Let's be clear about something, though. Can, transferring these assets in the middle of a death investigation, as opposed to 2 years ago or a year ago,
right,
could a court look at this and say this was a deliberate attempt to, what you say, concealing assets, and they could breach it, they could pierce it, they could say, even though that you've transferred this into your mother's name, that was invalid. This is a way for, let's say, a plaintiff who sues him, or let's say in a criminal judgment to pay that fine. Can a court look at that and say, even though you transferred it, it's still open season on those properties?
Yeah, this is what's so puzzling about this. It is a very basic premise of law throughout the country that you can't transfer assets after the event happens that would otherwise trigger collecting on those assets. So we have rules in different states. Sometimes they're called fraudulent transfers. Sometimes they're called fraudulent conveyances. There's a lot of different names for them. But the crux of it is you cannot transfer assets to protect yourself from a creditor when the event, the triggering event, in this case, the death of Celeste, happens prior to. This happened just in the last several days versus her death, which I'm not even sure we know exactly when her death was. But clearly these transfers are after her death. So it would take little effort for a court to undo this transaction and rule that it is a collectible asset of David.
Be clear about something else. We don't know 100% why he did this, right? And I'll go to some other theories. But perhaps it does have something to do with this case regarding Celeste. If he did this in anticipation of a criminal action, or he did this in anticipation of a lawsuit, to be clear, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's guilty. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's liable. It doesn't necessarily mean that he did something here. It would just be an anticipation of what could happen, right? Because he could come out and say, I'm being falsely accused. I'm just doing what I have to do to protect myself. But that doesn't necessarily, what we say in the law, it's not consciousness of guilt, right?
Well, I'm not sure I entirely agree. I think...
Okay, that's fair.
I think you could make an argument. And depending on how it comes into evidence, you could have admissible evidence against him that it is essentially an admission of wrongdoing or an admission of liability. Now, if there's a criminal case, he can't be called to the stand and say, hey, David, why'd you do this? Right? He has Fifth Amendment protections. He'd never take the stand. But that doesn't prevent his mother from taking the stand. And nothing insulates mom. So they could depose mom and say, why did David do this? Did he ever tell you why he did this? And all of his conversations, all of his text communications with mom or anyone else, those would be admissible evidence. So I have a feeling if they dig, and I suspect they're going to dig, you'll probably find some communication that is admissible and can eventually be used against him. Again, speculating. Look, if he's, I hate saying this, but if he's innocent, he has nothing to hide. That's such a sort of a weird, terrible cliche that sometimes people say. Yeah. So obviously, if he didn't do anything, if there's no judgment entered against him in a civil case, or if there's no fine levied against him as part of a criminal conviction, then yeah, the conveyance is fine and nothing will eventually happen. I think the circumstantial evidence here is that something did run afoul of David's life, and that's why he did this.
Would his mother have to testify about this transfer?
Yeah, his mother would have to testify. The lawyers who did the transaction would have to testify. The lawyers who drafted the trust documents might have to testify depending on how these documents were created. I kind of want to see those documents because were these properties in a trust to begin with, but he was the beneficiary of the trust and the deed was simply in the name of the trust? If that's the case, then he simply transferred the beneficiary. It's still a fraudulent conveyance. It's still going to be undone if there's eventually a judgment against him. Or did he create the trust for the purpose of this particular conveyance? And if he did, that trust document probably would have been created in the last few weeks. I want to know how that trust document came into existence. A whole lot of people are going to have to testify about that.
And real quick, why put it in a trust as opposed to just, I don't know, selling the properties to his mom?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a belief in this country. I do this a lot. There's a belief in this country that if you just put your assets in a trust, they're somehow protected. And the truth is, the reality is, almost all trusts are breakable at some level. Even the most honorific offshore trusts, you see this all the time with offshore trusts in the Caribbean or offshore European trusts, you can eventually break those trusts. It's very hard. It's very expensive. So I suspect he sort of just said, let's just put it in a trust where it won't be immediately reachable. I don't know if it's a revocable trust, if it's an irrevocable trust. If it's a revocable trust, he can simply revoke the trust and take his assets back. It would take one sentence. He could just write, I hereby revoke the trust, sign his name, the assets go back to him. If it's an irrevocable trust, he can't do that because by definition, it's irrevocable. It can be undone by a court if it was fraudulent. But there's all kinds of tax implications for a revocable trust versus an irrevocable trust. I'm not sure why he did this, except I suspect this was sort of a basic low-level attempted asset protection that I don't think is going to provide much protection in the end.